Hello everyone. So I'm super glad that you are watching this video, and if you haven't subscribed the channel, go ahead and do that and like this video. In this video we are going to talk about machine coding round. That is one of the most important rounds in front-end interviews, and this is the third video in this series. So if you haven't watched the first two video, go ahead and watch that first, because the first and second video is somehow related to this video of machine coding round. The second video of browser coding round, it's entirely related to this video as well, because browser coding round and machine coding round are almost similar. It's just that in this series we have divided them based on the how much time that making a small component is gonna take. So that's why we have separated, but you can consider both the rounds as similar, machine coding and browser coding, but it depends upon company to company. So we also separated that based on the times, how much time you're gonna take. But in browser coding round you'll find components that are really simple, that can be built within 45 minutes or 60 minutes. But in this video that we're gonna talk about various question as well in machine coding round. So in that machine coding round, it varies a lot. It can range into 1 hour to 4 hour or 5 hour or 6 hour as well, where it depends on the company how much time they're gonna give you. But before moving that, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and we are gonna divide this video in 3 parts. First part, we are gonna talk about what you can expect in a machine coding round, what you need to be good at to do good in machine coding round. Second could be we'll discussing various questions that I have prepared. I have a Figma file generated, I have design ready and everything. So it takes a lot of time, so that's why this video was delayed a bit. But now the third part would be mostly tips and tricks and what to prepare and how to prepare, mostly on machine coding round. On how to prepare, this series is gonna help you in the later point of time. We are definitely gonna bring a lot of questions in this channel on machine coding as well. But what to prepare, what to expect in this round, right? What you should be good at before jumping to this round, we'll be discussing that in the third part. So first part, we'll discuss what you can expect in browser coding, machine coding round, and what are the things you need to look for in machine coding round. Next, we are going to discuss some questions, well prepared, nicely designed questions. And the third one, what should you learn in HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So let's get started and talk about what is machine coding round. First and foremost, machine coding round is a round where you would be given a small web application to create using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It will be mostly vanilla JavaScript. Most of the company prefers that, but it could differ company to company. Some company use heavily on React, so they could allow you to use React as well, and some Angular as well, and some Vue as well. It depends. So now let's come to the time. How much time you are given in a machine coding round? So it depends. It depends entirely on company to company. So it can range into 30 minutes to 45 to 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, anything like that fulfills the requirement of the company. But this short components building we have already covered in that browser coding round. In this, we are gonna cover problems that are 1 hour to 2 hours or 3 hours or more than that. So what you will be having, you join a call and you will be given a statement, problem statement that build this. So in machine coding round, it's not only like if you can code, you can go through it. It's also about coming with the requirements and how you're going to approach the problem. So you'll be giving a random problem and you have to come with the requirement, ask better question to the interviewers and get the clarification all round, right? How you're going to build that, what you're going to build that, and everything. Once you're ready with the solution and mind map of how you're going to create that, so you can discuss with your interviewer that this is I'm going to create that is mutual agreement between you and the interviewer. So that also we are covered in the browser coding round. You can check out that as well, how to do that. So once you're ready with the mutual agreement, then go ahead and start with your coding. But before that, I would suggest dividing your problem statement into 2 parts. Suppose you are given a problem to build X, for example, and you have divided into 2 parts, X1 and X2. So you can name it X1 as a must-have feature. This feature needs to have in your web application or component to work it, and some are could have feature or nice to have feature, where it could be like if they are not there application will work, it will work as expected, no issue. But this feature, if it will have, it could be extension, and it will make the component or web app too better, right, to use. So divide that problem into two part: must have feature or nice to have feature. So that for must have, you have to build that in that particular time frame given to you. That is must have, that you have to build this thing, and that upon that only you need to have agreement with your interviewer that this I'm gonna build at the end of this particular interview, right? And that decides also various things on the result. And on the nice to have feature, if you have time, go ahead with it and build it. That could be added extension to that. Moving on, the first part would be before going to machine coding round, the first thing is, if you're a front-end developer, you might be already coding in HTML, CSS and JavaScript, or a framework like React, Angular, Vue, anything like Blazor. So you need to have HTML, CSS and JavaScript knowledge, first thing. Second thing, you should have a basic web foundation, how the web works, how the browser works, how you get the data from the server and you render on the browser, how actual browser work, everything you need to have a basic clear understanding, right? Any point of time you could be asked like explain how browser work, or explain how the local storage work, explain how cookies are stored in the browser, explain how network requests are made. And you could ask to explain the dev tools in browser, how to use the dev tool to debug a web application or something like that. So that is various things that you should have. Next thing you should have in a machine coding round is a clarifying question. So you would be given a random problem that would not be so much technical. So it would be like just a normal non-technical person telling to you build something. So you have to ask clarifying question where you can get some requirement that okay, this is I'm gonna build, and this is your ideation to code or design conversion could happen in this phase. So ask clarifying question. That is one of the requirements of machine coding round. Next thing is demoable code, readable code. Whenever you write something or write code, interviewer will judge you on demoable code, or how clean code you are writing, how you're naming the function, variables and everything, this and that, right? So you should focus on naming variable. Don't just name variable X, right? Name them something meaningful, right? That is the next thing. Write the code modular, like don't repeat yourself, the DROI approach, DROI approach. Don't repeat yourself. Wherever you feel that this component is, or this functionality can be reused, have it a separate module and have a modular kind of approach on your code, so you can reuse the functionality and it can reduce the bundle size and you can help on the interviews as well. Next thing is discussing with the interviewer. If you are stuck anywhere or you need any clarification, one of the most important thing is discussing with the interviewer. Have the clarification that you can ask the interviewer that if you are stuck anywhere, it's not just that everything. So you have to ask the interviewer if you are stuck anywhere, take the suggestion. It's like if you're selected for that interview, you are gonna work with a team, right? So that depicts like if you're stuck on something, whether you are asking that thing to a team member or not, and get it clarified to work done, right? End goal is work should be done. How work can be done with the team activities, ask someone, right? So I don't know all the things, right? I depends on some teammates to understanding some functionality, or if I'm stuck somewhere, I go to my teammates and ask them. So that's also you need to depict on the machine coding round. So this is it. This is the first part. Let's move on to the second part. Then we'll come back to this big frame. Till then we'll go to the screen and see various machine coding round question videos that could be help you out there. But this is just what could be the question can be asked, but there are a lot of things that could be there in this series where we'll be coding machine coding round videos, machine coding round component question, browser coding round component question, JavaScript and whatnot. So if you haven't subscribed till now, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. I will see on screen. Hi everyone, so I'll be teeny tiny here again. So here we are going to discuss various questions that could be asked in machine coding round. So we're going to talk about various questions and their overviews, how you should approach or what kind of question you should ask, right? So I've gathered this question by various experiences, or going to various websites, or thinking on my own, like what could be the question that would be suitable for a machine coding round, right? So there could be various questions, and there are other awesome creators as well, creating a lot of front-end contents as well. So you can watch this video in resemblance to them as well, and watch their video, my video, wherever you get to learn, just watch them, right? So let's move on. Let's talk about first one. So I have like 9 questions to discuss today, so we'll start with first one. The first one is shopping website. It is one of the most popular. So if you are giving interviews for a shopping e-commerce company, so you might have already guessed which company I'm talking about, but I'm not gonna name them. But for example, if you're approaching a company, it's highly likely that you would be getting some question that is related to their product, right? Some small part of their product or overview of their product could be a machine coding round question, because that's where you're gonna work after you get into the company, right? So it's highly likely. So before going to an interview, whichever company it is, like just see their products, see the visual, try to build some basic things from their website or from their product. That would definitely help, right? But here we're going to talk about this first question. Is this, it's a shopper website, and it have various things. So you will be given this thing to build. The time varies, right? I told you, right? Time varies, different company for different different time frame you can get that. But here you can see various things. You can see various things, and you can judge the website by seeing once, right? So if I scroll down, there are a lot of things here. First thing first, I told you, right? You have to clarify the questions, and because if you are given like 1 hour, it's very rarely possible to build everything on your site, right? So you have to clarify. If you're given 4 hours, 5 hours, then it will be possible to build entire thing and various things, right? So first thing, you have to clarify what to build, what to know. Once you are done with that, let's talk about how should you approach. First thing is the main section where you are seeing the products, right? And this product will be coming from a JSON, right? JSON or any method that you are using for passing data here and there. So first thing would be building this component, dividing the page into components. For example, this particular section would be a component, this particular section would be a component, this particular section would be a component. This particular things are similar. So this could be one component placed on a modular code. I told you, right? Modular code placed into modular place, and you can use it again basically. So again, it depends upon company to give you a choice of a framework, JavaScript framework or vanilla JavaScript, but practice the question in vanilla JavaScript, then you can practice in framework as well. Many companies which is small stage startup would mostly depend upon the frameworks, because they want to get the work done as soon as possible. So they would take up this to directly acting on the framework. So let's discuss the question. So there are various things. So this data, how it coming, how you be building a component, JSON. But the main factor is the filters, right? How you would be handling the filters. For example, there are a lot of things here that could be the part of your website. The first thing, right? So there are a lot of things. For example, now clothes thing and shoes or section is selected, so you are seeing that page. So you have to think about the approach. How would you gonna take to build this web application? If you're building also for one section, there will be other section as well. So if you have to think all the way around, because there could be extension to your time and told to build, like extend this app or website to entertainment section as well, or music section as well. So you have to think with that approach. You've already think this approach, for this particular section. Let's talk about the filters. For example, you see all categories. Inside all categories there are electronic. Inside electronic there are cell phones and other things. So if you have seen my browser coding round video in the previous section, we have already talked about this particular small components, right? Tree structure. So again, like browser coding round, small things comes here again and map to bigger problem, right? So you will be given something like this, and you have to come with a filter idea, like how would you show the product out here based on the filter selected here, right? Again, once the filter is selected, there will be various things like sort by low price, high price, popularity, and high discount and things like that. So you have to think about that as well, how we're gonna do that, how we are gonna filter. You can use various JavaScript method to do that, right? How we are gonna bind that in the this particular section. So you have to think about that. First thing is this filter, second thing is this filter, third thing are conditional filters, like what are the delivery options. For example, for a product there would be a delivery option that it would be delivered to only particular places, or it would be delivered only after payment. It would not be cash on delivery. So that delivery option comes here. Condition like new, renewed, refurbished, or old, something like that. So that would also come here. So it's all depend, like you have a grid which have the data. You have to just filter on that and you get the new data, right? So you have to think about that previously. First you have to think about this, how you map this data, how would if smart watch is selected, how would bring smart that watch here, how would make the API call and other things, right? So if you go down, there are other filters as well, like low to high, another thing, year of manufacturing. This would be simpler. You go to there would be a key or property that would be here of year of manufacturing. You just map to a product, iterate through this list and get the turn back. It's a normal JavaScript. So again, if you see here, you can see there are two things. One is grid view, one is list view. If you click on grid view, it will show grid. If you click on list view, it will be shown as a list. So this things you should also think about how you are going to approach the UI, right? Next thing is, one of the most important in this kind of websites are paginations, right? So you have to think approach like how would you be doing pagination. For example, you selected something like cell phones, right? And you get thousands of cell phones. You are not gonna show that thousands of cell phones in one page, right? You would be ideally doing something like pagination. So you have to think about that approach. How many product you're gonna show in one page. In one page, how gonna show on a product. You have 1,000 products. If you're gonna show 10 products divided by 1,000, there would be 100 pagination things. So you have to decide that, right? So at first place only, then only approach these problems. So I guess like you have got this idea. Let's move to the next problem. That would be email box. So you might have already guessed, right? How should this work, like how it would work. It would be a Gmail app or something like that. So here also it's a bigger problem. You have to get it clarified, what things to build, what things not to build, and things like that. So you can see there is a site section, there is a panel A, panel B, panel C, something like that, right? And you select inbox, your inbox opens up. You select outbox, your outbox shows up here. You select start, so once you select the mail, it shows up in this panel. That's the requirement basically, right? Next thing, if you search a mail, search should be appearing over here, like whatever you search, right? So these things you have to handle, get it clarified. One thing to note is how do you style, like machine coding is also about writing CSS and all. So my suggestion would be study Flexbox. This would be becoming very simpler, like building grids and building grids inside grids. This would be very simpler if you learn Flexbox. So we'll cover that ahead as well. So that would be one thing. Next thing would be going ahead and asking clarify question, how to group them into primary or secondary and things like that, right? How the data will be coming, how you'll be making API calls, whether you make API calls and fetch data and do lazy loading, something like that, or you apply pagination we talked about in the previous video, right? You might have seen that Gmail in the down there is 1 2 3 4, like next. So it shows 50 mails, again go back 51 to 100, again go forward 101 to 151, things like that, right? So you have to think about in that approach. I guess you have got the idea of it. So first build the design, then go with the functionality one by one, right? So you have to think about and that the structure, build the models first, how a mail gonna look like, how a entire grid section would gonna look like, how you will be binding the data and things like that, right? Let's move on to next one. That is this particular thing. This is a famous one. So you'll be given to build if I can make it a bit smaller, I don't know, it's going too large. Let's see in this itself. So if you see this thing, so it tells like to do in design. So if you have used a Kanban board, Jira, Azure DevOps or anything, or if you do regular software development, right? I guess you do daily, so you might already have seen this kind of thing. It's a Kanban board. You can find it in Jira or Azure DevOps, wherever you use daily. So you have a tasks to do, and there are various state of the tasks, and you can drag and drop. The main feature here is to drag and drop, right? So there are various API of HTML5 where you can use that to drag and drop. So you could search that as well over the net while doing the coding interview, right? Generally interviews allow to look into the syntax or something to look around, not the solution but the syntax and all. It's nobody remembers the entire syntax, right? So that would be expected. Next thing is how we do approach the drag and drop, right? Next thing is various state or various types of data. For example, this is to do type, this is in design type, this is in development, testing and clone and done and things like that. So if you're coding in TypeScript, you have something like enums of tasks where they are, or how your own way to handle it in JavaScript, right? So you have to think about that, right? How you're gonna drag and drop, how you are gonna bring one task to another task. For example, if I drag this first task to this InDesign, how would you map this to remove from to-do list, move it to InDesign, push the data to InDesign, right? Things like that. So if you move to something like to here, so again removing from InDesign, moving to in development. So you have to think about that as well, right? After all, right, that is the basic crux of this drag and drop and how it handle the state of the tasks, right? So this would be more of this from this question. Let's move on to next one. This is one of my personal favorites, and you might have already guessed where it is coming from. It's a Zoom calendar or Teams or Outlook or Gmail app or Google Calendar, anything like whatever that uses a calendar types from that could be a problem basically. So I have just randomly selected and had some meetings in there. Yeah, this would be one kind of question where you be given a JSON, or you have to map to this particular structure. So this would be broken down to one day also. For example, only Monday for this filling this particular row. So again, grid and flexbox comes in this series, this particular part. It will help a lot, right? The main thing would be modeling the data in this particular problem. It would be very various cases and scenario would be there while modeling the data. For example, you're building for one day, for example Monday, right? 9 to 5 o'clock, right? So once you get the JSON data, it's very simple task to map the data and put that in the calendar, this particular row or column, right? But the thing is, there could be a colliding meeting. Like for example, this is a focus time from 9 to 12 p.m. and there is a meeting in between. So how would you handle that? How would show that in UI? There would be same meeting at same time, and there could be one high priority meeting, low priority meeting. There could be recurring meeting. How would you handle that in entire thing, right? There could be a small time meeting, for example, for 5-10 minutes, right? How would we handle that in API, in UI basically, because you have a 1 hour frame here. How would you place that here, right? So that thing you need to handle. You can decide the coordinates where to put and things like that. So you have to focus on that. But you will be given a JSON, map it to the calendar, and just so you have to have various edge cases as well, like same meetings at the same time. Priority, like a bigger meeting is there, in between there is another meeting. How would you handle focus time? For example, a meeting is scheduled in a focus time. Would it be like focus time would be shown before that meeting, which would take priority? So I hope like this question was simpler and you got that, but there are various edge cases as well to handle this, right? Let's move on to other one. This is bit tricky and one of the most my favorite, right? So what here we are telling about is dynamically generating the screen. For example, there would be various scenario where you're building an application and you don't want to hard code your inputs and everything in the UI. You get everything from the backend. You configure the config in the backend, you get that config file and generate the UI based on that. For example, a config file could look like this, right? So this is for just first field where you get the config file for name. Certain you get everything, but you get the config file for name and you generate this particular thing. So there could be various things that you need to handle here. For example, type, it is an input type. What is will be a placeholder? This name is this name. Again, what is the config? Let me zoom a bit, like increase the size of it so you can see that better. Okay, now config is data type of text. What would be the data type of coming from here? So you would have to handle various things out here, right? So you have to decide how to handle that. Right, there could be predefined predefined components like input, like paragraph, like drop downs, like this country is a drop down, right? There could be text area, there could be normal input, so buttons. So you have to decide that and map that thing and build the entire thing. Once that is done, you have to map this array and build the entire thing in the screen. So this is how it works. Now this would be great approach to take a config file and start building on top of that. There are various things like error message. So if any error occurs on the screen, this error message you would show basically, right? So the entire structure would be same for each input for each of the components, right? But the thing is the type, the placeholder, and these things differs, right? So you have to think how to handle that, right? But we'll be surely discussing this question in our later section where we will prepare these things. So hit the subscribe button and stay tuned. Let's move on to the next question. We have a lot of things. Okay, so this is like handling the state mostly. So you have a contact details. So if you see, there are other pages as well, right? So first page, click next, go to second page, click next, go to third page, click next, go to fifth page, right? And submit. So one thing is to note here is you have to manage the state. How would be you will be managing the state, right? So for example, you click on next, this data goes to the server, makes the API and save the data, or you take the data forward to this screen, then again next is click, take the data forward to this screen, and again next is click, take the data forward to this screen, and then submit. So you have to decide that on, get clarified from the interviewer and everything, then move on. But I guess this is pretty much clear. You click on next, go to this website, 2 is done, then go to next, 3 is done, then go to next, 4 is done, and then click on submit, and this submits the data. So the only thing is here layouting. How would you handle this particular things? If you are on page 2, you would already completed the 1. If you're on 3, you have already completed first 2, right? These things you have to need to handle, right? And based on that, you have to update this UI as well. Rest things are clear. You would have a local JSON or anything that state management, like you have to do, how you're gonna do that, right? So that decides your approach, right? So there are other fields as well. Some would be address, some would be like plain text, some would be text area, some would be number, some would be some options, right? So you have to decide how to approach that. But this is a generally see, this came in mind where I was developing something like this, and I thought no, this would like result in a machine coding round. So that's where this question coming from. Yeah, this one is like a famous one, and this also came in mind when I was preparing questions for this, right? So Darshan is here. So hey Darshan, if you're watching this video, you know what to do, right? So this is just a copy of Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, right? So here also various things comes in place. How you're gonna lay out the things, how you're gonna map the users of this space. For example, there are listener, there are host, there is co-host, there are speaker. So again, like if you're coding in TypeScript, enum, how you're mapping the enums and things like that, right? Whether you are a speaker, this particular UI entirely changes, right? You would be like mute and more options and reaction and other things like that. If you're audience, you ideally don't see this mute, you would ideally see a request button and something like that. So that changes, and that need to be handled. Everything when the spaces was started, how would you handle started to end time? This will keep on moving 1103, 1104, 1105, things like that. A leave button in the top and certain other more options. Sharing this using a tweet or something like that, right? So the main thing is how we'd handle the states, whether a user is speaker or whether a user is listener or a host or co-host and things like that. if you are told to build it full-fledged, have a simple prototype, so you'd think like it's a real-time application. So you might be using something like WebSocket or WebRTC, right? Real-time communication. So you have to think about that, convey with the interviewer, and then approach this problem, right? But on the top of the mind, basic thing, a speaker section, audience section, you have to map like which things will be displayed here, because there are real-time things, people joining then leaving, how would remove their icon or name or this particular component from the audience or speaker section. So that you have to handle on the real time, maybe, right? So you have to discuss with your interviewer, like how would you handle that, and if they agree, you can move on. Yeah. So next one is like Sudoku. It's a tough one. It'll be given something like this. When you create a new game and you have to fill this, and and you win if you do it successfully. But the thing is, undo feature will be there, erase feature will be there, that will erase the entire component. Hint feature will be there, that will be giving the hint, right? Input these things. When you click on 2, wherever your input is, for example at this box, if you click on 2, it goes to 2 here. Then you have to handle various things, like in Sudoku, one row could not have same thing, one column should not have same thing. So you have to manage various things, right? For example, you could have a pop-up. If you enter 2 here, it's already there in this row and column as well. So you just pop up in the red, or if it is okay, pop up in the green, right? Things like that. So that goes on. You have to run the logic every time. How we are gonna decide the winner, how we are gonna decide the correct number in a row or column, right? So this is a bit tricky one. You have to think about it a lot, right? And we'll surely do this someday in this series, right? We'll code it, right? Moving on, next thing, and the last one for today is tic-tac-toe. Famous one, right? Everyone plays in the last bench, sitting in the last bench in their school or college days, or even at work maybe, right? Sudoku. So your Sudoku board is there. It's a simple one, everyone knows. There are 2 players, one cross, one circle. If one player makes 3 of them correctly, vertically, horizontally, or diagonally, they win, right? So you have to manage various things, like who is playing now and who is winning. If someone is doing block, show the message that user 1 or user 2 has won. How would handle a tie, how to refresh the entire grid to bring it to empty values, right? For example, next thing would be modification of this particular thing to bring at constant time, not checking every time entire row, entire column, or entire diagonally to the winner has completed the thing or not, but using in a constant time. That's the extension. That's a famous interview question as well, right? So we'll discuss this as well sometime, but these were the primary questions that could be asked in a machine coding round. There are other questions as well, like building a cart system. That would be a subset of this particular machine coding one round, where you click on cart, it goes to the cart, how you are doing the state management. So this particular problem could also be broken down into small problems, where you only handle grid and filters, and one problem that would only handle carts. You click on this, goes to cart, click on again, remove, it removes from cart, right? So these things could be there could be UI and of a famous one like Splitwise app. So I was just using that sometime, and I thought like this could be a nice UI problem, right? To ask Splitwise UI. There are 4 people, 1 people you added, 5 people. How would you show the splitted money, and how would you ideally show everything? How would manage, right? It's a really interesting problem to tackle, right? Next would be you open app, you put your location, you see the various cars available, just like Uber, right? You saw cars available, what cars are available nearby. So if you get a JSON where you have a car location, their latitude, longitude, then you have to click on that, your latitude and longitude, you match like which are available on 5 kilometer match, and then show that particular car, these cars are available, these vehicles are available, you can book them. So this could be a problem as well. There are other things like contact managers and problem as well, right? We'll discuss surely that in the preparation phase, but before that, this was the questions. We'll move on the third section of this video. I know this video is pretty long, but believe me, this is one of the finest and detailed video on machine coding round for UI on YouTube. So please share this. It's gonna take a lot of hard work to build this, edit this, upload this, right? So make sure you subscribe, share, and comment out your feedbacks in this. But let's move on the third one, where we'll talk about what things you should look for and what things you should prepare for a machine coding round. Hey everyone, welcome back. So I guess you have enjoyed that previous section of this video where we discussed the question, but you have got the question, you have got what is machine coding round. But the thing is how to prepare, and we'll definitely cover that preparation in this series as well. But what are the things you need to look for machine coding round, right? So we'll be discussing that. Let me bring that up. And first thing is, most of the machine coding round will be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Most of company don't allow writing things in frameworks like React, Angular, or Vue, or anything other, right? So most of the company will prefer plain JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. So practice on vanilla JavaScript. First thing is HTML. So whenever you're writing the template of your component or website that you have got to build, first thing is focusing on the template HTML. So the first thing is you have to write the semantic HTML. It's just you're making everything as a div. You have to make various things write a semantic HTML. So you name a section as a section, or header as a header, and sidebar is a sidebar, not name everything as a div, right? So navbar as a navbar, not name as a div and style based on that and make it a navbar. Rather, writing that semantic increases the SEO of search engine and things like that. Also, you could easily understand your code when you're looking into that, right? So that also makes sense, writing a semantic HTML. Next thing is understanding area. So accessibility is one of the most top areas in web dev as well, and I would suggest learn about a bit. I also don't know entire of the thing, but I'm trying to learn about more on accessibility and onto that, how we can embed things on accessibility in the HTML itself, right? There are other ways to do as well, but how we can embed things, make things accessible in the HTML itself. First thing would be providing the alternate text in an image and things like that. There could be area roles provided to the sections of your HTML template, right? So understanding area is very important. You should it just takes half an hour or 1 hour to see what area role is. Next time onwards, when you start writing HTML, you would be focusing on that area roles as well, right? Next thing is loading scripts. For example, if you're writing HTML templates, you would be doing something in the JS as well for writing some logics and all. So there are various custom to load a script, you are loading a script asynchronously or deferring the script. So there are various types to things to load a script. So you have to focus on that as well. How could you load a script, right? Should you place in the top of the HTML file, or should you place at the bottom of the HTML file? So that should also needs to be considered. Next thing is linking files. For example, when you're writing HTML, if you're not linking CSS to make it modular, ideally you would be doing linking a CSS file that is a separate file into an HTML. So you have to understand how to link in the header, how to link tag and everything to bring your CSS to your HTML and bring it to life, right? So this was from the HTML. Let's move on to CSS. As we have already seen various components or various questions, one thing you have noticed is this were properly aligned and things like that. Whether your color section is not correct or bad or not much accessible on color selection, but the thing is the layouting and the layout and how you're creating layouting that everybody focuses, right? So getting a good layout is very important. So there is a concept known as phrasebox in CSS or grid. So you should understand that concept of phrasebox and grid. That is really helpful. That can be used to create layout inside layout, grids inside grids, or rows inside columns, things like that. So you have to practice that a lot in the grid to make layout, right? There is a nice article on CSS tricks. I guess I would link that in the description. You can check that on Flexbox. that's a amazing tutorial or blog to check out, right? Next thing is handling responsiveness. It's not always mandatory, but it's good to have responsive thing on your app or component, whatever you're building. There are basic properties like margin, padding, colors, fonts. How would you load a font from a Google font or any CDN, right? So that understanding is also very important. Next thing would be understanding how would you color. Next thing would be moving to JavaScript, the important one, right? So if you have seen this thing, I told you, right, practice on vanilla JavaScript, then people can't build on vanilla JavaScript much of the things because people move on to the frameworks early, right? I also can't build entire thing in JavaScript, so practice is required, right? With practice only it will come, and how you're doing in interviews, that depends upon practice as well. So you have to practice on vanilla JavaScript, then do the same thing in framework, that so you can understand the difference, like how would you handle a thing that is handled in a framework in plain JavaScript as well. So you have to various things you have to think. So first one is writing clean code and good code. So that would come with practice, definitely. But there are various things that we can code. Writing a good function, first thing, right? Understanding objects, classes, because objects will always be there in JavaScript, and classes is no different, right? And understanding async await, making API calls. How would you make an API call, get a response from a remote server, remote content you can bring in your website, right? So for example, you could be given a link as well. You be told to bring the data from here and showing the screen, right? As we talked about, like rights, for example, the latitude, longitude you get in a JSON, or grid, card system, the grid system, you get that in a JSON, you load that in a screen. Everything can be come from the server as a JSON as well, right? So you have to know how to fetch, how to bring that, how to load in your local, and how to do the binding with the UI. So that understanding is very very important, right? Next thing is writing polyfills. So for example, say there could be a scenario, it's not always, but there could be a scenario where you're writing something that doesn't works on older browser, right? So you have to write polyfills for that. So you need to understand like what is polyfills, how would write that polyfills, and things like that, right? Let's move on. And doing optimization is very important. Optimization, like concept like throttling or debouncing. So there are various optimization techniques, like for example, you're searching something, right? And on a shopping website, e-commerce website, you're searching something. So you could apply certain JavaScript techniques to reduce the number of API calls, debounce the calls, and make it certain intervals as well. So that optimization is very good, like and your understanding of local storage, how to use local storage, how to set data, how to get item, how to delete a local storage, a key and value pair. So that is also important, because sometimes you have to use the local storage to save some data, right? Understanding network request, how the network call is going. Just go to the DevTools and see how network call is going. That understanding is required. Understanding set timeouts, understanding how to clear timeouts. These understandings are very important, because that come handy any place, or it could be asked as an independent question as well when you're doing the JavaScript rounds, right? So this was much of it. Some tips and tricks. Focusing on JavaScript helps. Frameworks are definitely great, but focusing on JavaScript helps. But built on plain JavaScript, then move on to frameworks. That would really help, right? But again, depends on the company. Some company only love frameworks. Some company told that do it in purely React or Angular, because their tech stack is Angular, React, or Vue, or anything other else. So directly they come to React. If you're coding React, just come. Some comes and don't allow that, but it depends upon the company. Learn about various array methods, right? That would help, like filter, map, reduce, sort, things like that. Array methods in JavaScript, that would definitely help. We have seen very instances, right, where filter was that grid filter, e-commerce one. So that would be easier. Again, understanding to use API, how to make API calls, like using third-party library like Axios, or whether you are using like something like fetch or XML HTTP request, whatever. Like you have to understand like how to make an API call, get the data. That would be things. Like optimization, we have already talked about that. Optimization, how to optimize your calls, API calls, or certain things like that, right? Again, flexbox is too important, right, for this in CSS. Don't miss anything. Flexbox and other properties that we talked about, right? And one last important thing is, if you're targeting small age or startups, then you could highly chances you could land upon a framework level coding, machine coding, where you'll be directly told to write in React, Angular. That would make super easy tasks, because their tech stack is framework. They will not waste time to teach you a framework. This is how ideally tech industry work. Do and start writing. But as the companies grows, they focus on core things, because these frameworks are gonna come and go, but the core JavaScript concept will still there. And again, frameworks are built on top of JavaScript. If you know JavaScript, who knows, like, you can build your own framework and people can use it, right? So that was this with this video. I hope you have liked this video, and I really appreciate if you share this video. If you have got some value with this video, definitely share that, like, comment, right? Whatever feedbacks you have, just put that in comments, and we'll see you next time. Till then, one last thing, like, don't go without subscribing. Share this video, and if you're building something out of these components and you want to share, just tag me and share with me. I would happy to reshare and see that work you're doing. What can I bring that component in my series as well, taking inspiration from you, right? So just share it, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.